Good morning. Welcome back. Today I have a books with the same title video, which, if you recall, I had mentioned as a specific plan in my TBR for last month, but here we are this month doing it instead because it took me a little bit longer than I was expecting to decide what was going on with these books. But if you recall from that TBR video, that means we're talking about The Bad Place. So let's just kind of hop right into this. First off, we have The Bad Place by Dean Koontz, and then we also have The Bad Place by M.K. Hill. So, in this context, you've probably seen the title of this video, so you're wondering, which of these ones took you to The Bad Place? And that would be this one, which is kind of surprising for me. Normally I really enjoy Dean Koontz. This is probably the first Dean Koontz book that I've ever DNF'd, but that's where we're at with this one. This is the one that took me to The Bad Place. I got about 130-ish pages into this before I decided that I didn't want to keep reading, so I did not. So, general idea of this. Just for starters, I really wasn't jiving with this book to begin with. The plot and the story were not doing things that I was super enjoying. A lot of the time I do like books with multiple character perspectives, but this one just wasn't doing anything with it that I was like, yeah, I'm really enjoying these characters or this setting and stuff. I will say that the general concept for Frank Pollard, I want to say his name was, who wakes up without his memories and is trying to figure out what's going on, he was fairly compelling. The couple who are the pseudo detectives were kind of interesting, but I had some issues with some of the stuff that was going on with them. And then our major villains, who was a brother and two sisters, them I was not getting on with at all. So let's talk beyond the general plot that I wasn't driving with, what really ended up making me DNF this book. So, I mentioned that there is this couple that are detectives who kind of take on Frank Pollard's case and are gonna help him find his memories or whatever. This couple, the wife has a brother who has Down syndrome, which, cool, I like representation of different things, and I've met Down syndrome people, and I find them enjoyable, and it was fun in that aspect to see it. However, when we very first get the brother with Down syndrome described, it's described from the husband's perspective, and the thing that he says is that people with Down syndrome are pitiable, and you have to see past your pity before you can appreciate them as a person. And beyond being a little bit of a awful take just in general to say that you have to pity these people because of their mental illness or disability or whatever phrasing you're supposed to use for that, I feel like the Down syndrome people I have met, the first thing that I feel is not pity. Honestly, all the Down syndrome people I have met are very sweet and lovely people, and if anything, I see a Down syndrome person and I immediately want to be friends with them because they have all been such wonderful, lovely people. And I guess maybe he's talking about how since their mental capacities are different and they process the world differently, you pity them for that. But even that, I personally don't feel like is an issue. Just because someone processes the world differently doesn't make them pitiable. Anyway, I don't understand what he was going for with that. It's not been my experience with people with Down syndrome, and I was very upset by this. It was written in the 90s, so maybe that's some of the weird take on it, because obviously some of those kinds of things have been approached better as time has progressed onwards, but in any case, that was the first thing that kind of made me do I want to keep reading this book when I'm already not driving with it too? But then, as I mentioned, the main villain is a brother and two sisters, and the two sisters are also in the mental disability range. One of them doesn't speak at all, and they have like these pseudo-magical powers because they have this telepathic link to each other just between the two sisters. And they can also like go into animal bodies and stuff, which in general, really cool concept. One of my favorite tropes, and like if I had a superpower personally, would be all those animal related type things. Talking to animals, becoming an animal, going into the minds of animals, that kind of thing sounds really cool. However, one of the sisters, the one who does talk, because I guess maybe they're both meant to be kind of autistic in that sense, but the one who does talk is described as, for part of her childhood, she had been autistic, and then through her working on her magical telepathic abilities, she's able to abandon and overcome her autism. And like, I get that it's a story, but can we not have the narrative that because someone has this different mind processing, they have to overcome it and abandon it? Can they not use the actual thing? Like, I don't know. It just didn't work for me. I was very upset by this. I was like, that's not how autism works in the real world. And pretending like it can work does not sit well with me, even if you've got this like pseudo-magical thing going on with these characters. It doesn't work for me. Like, let them be the beautiful autistic beings that they are, and don't make it a plot point that they could just get rid of it. Because that's not how it works for people. And if we're wanting to represent those kinds of characters, shouldn't we be representing them authentically and showing what they can do with the way their minds do process things, and not say, oh, to have this character do the things I want them to do, they can't actually be the thing that they started out as, you know? I don't like it. It made me mad. So, once I got to that description of those two sisters, and it was described that way, I was like, nope, I'm done. I already had issues with the Down syndrome, and now you're doing this with autism. We're not going to finish this book. So that's The Bad Place by Dean Koontz. I have no idea if it gets better. I have no idea what happens in the rest of the plot, but I really honestly don't care, both because I wasn't super jiving with a lot of what was happening in the story anyways, but also because of those portrayals that I have just mentioned. So, of the Dean Koontz books that I have read, I do not recommend this one. Just as a heads up, I'm sure there are other people out there who do enjoy this book and maybe didn't have those same kind of issues with the story being described that way, but I personally did. So, I will not be finishing this book, and I'm sad to have started it, honestly, because those descriptions just did not work for me. So, that's that one. Now, we can move on to something that makes me much happier to have read, and that is The Other Bad Place. This one is a suspense thriller novel. It's, I think, going to be part of a series because it's also got like a subtitle as a Sasha Dawson thriller. But I think this is the first one that she appears in. But if you can see the tagline, 6 children were taken and only 5 returned. That's the general premise of this. But what it is The Bad Place is in reference to this place where these 6 children were taken. They were kidnapped and they were stuck in the bad place. And then this is 20-ish years later or something. And then it seems like someone is trying to repeat this bad place thing and is kidnapping children again. And this one I found very fascinating. This was interesting character study stuff. There were lots of twists and turns. There was one chapter in particular where, hopefully this isn't too spoilery to say, but there was one chapter in particular that had ended where a character sees a child being abducted. Someone runs across the street to try and save the child from being abducted. He gets hit by a car, and then the chapter ends. And it was like, this is the wildest thing that I've ever read in my life. It was very fun, very fast-paced. I really enjoyed the different character studies and looking at how the trauma affected the children who were originally captured in the bad place and how they're trying to grow past. But then this person is coming back and seeming to do the same thing and targeting these people who are kind of related to the kids who were in the bad place. And it was just a fascinating book. There were a few moments where I was like, there is a little too much going on in this book. Sasha Dawson's family life in particular was like, holy crap, can we please not have every other person in her life having all these issues at the same time that she's trying to deal with this kidnapping case? But yeah, it was very enjoyable overall. I would be interested in reading more Sasha Dawson books, I think, probably. But hopefully with a little less of the family trauma, just because, as I said, some of that did feel a little bit like, I get that life happens while work happens, but some of it felt a little bit too much to me. And like, maybe we're being a little hyper-realistic instead of just staying in the realm of, yes, how do you balance work and life? Anyways, but yeah, I recommend this one. If you want to read a Bad Place book, read this one and not the Dean Koontz one. That's my thoughts there. Especially if you like just kind of fun, fast-paced thrillers, this is probably a good choice for you. Versus Dean Koontz, which even if you don't have the issues with the portrayals that I did, it wasn't really fast-paced. The thriller aspects of it probably come in later, as can often happen with a thriller where sometimes you have to build things up a bit, but it just wasn't doing stuff for me. It just wasn't. But this one did. This was a fun adventure. If you like wild chapter endings and things like the one I described, you'll probably like this. If you have issues with kidnapping stories, I would not recommend, just because obviously that's a major plot point in this, because it both took place in the past and we do get some like chapters that deal specifically with those events in the past of those kids' experience. It'll be like day 1 of the kidnapping and day 2 of the kidnapping, and things like that are kind of interwoven with the current events of the story, as well as then there are also the current kidnappings that are happening. So if you have issues with kidnapping, would not recommend, but otherwise this was a very fun, fast-paced thriller and you should go pick it up. I think it deserves some love. But I think that's all I've got for now. If you have any other Bad Place recommendations, I may be open to them. But if you just have other books with the same title, obviously I still like finding those. But yeah, that's I think all I've got for now. This is the Inlet Harper signing out.